And a couple of weeks ago, there was this big, press release that signed by Elon Musk, and a number of, huge, like just pretty much everyone was signing this letter, like, that we've got to pause AI development. Well, who's realistically ever going to do that? Are you now going to say, no, everybody down tools? Let's just keep it kind of, no, everyone stop. No, stop. You over there, exactly. Stop. It's not going to happen.
It's out of the box now, and it's not going to be put back in. I still think we need to understand that what we're dealing with isn't actually AI. It's not thinking for itself yet. What this thing is doing is scraping out all the information that exists publicly in the world right now, and then rehashing it into something else.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome to my co-host today, Mr. Shaun Cumming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the Humble Pie.
Good to be here, Alex. Good to catch up. How's things?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Where I am in the south of Spain, it's warm, where it'll continue to be warm for the foreseeable, varying from hot to an absolute rotter. Over the next few months. So yeah, next time you see me, I might be in a spaghetti-stained wife beater. No promises.
Well, I heard about that over here in the UK. They've been saying on the news about how Europe has been so hot early in the spring already, and whereas it's actually been a really bad spring over here in the UK, where I am in Scotland. It's been really cold and miserable. So that's just kind of standard for us. But hopefully the summer will appear soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost the opposite, because I know, you know what you doing going into it, but I know that when it comes to the south of Spain in the summer, it just becomes pretty punishing, and then you get these crazy heat waves, which I think continue to blow over across the rest of Europe. But it first comes in from Spain and sort of Portugal, because that's directly from a lot of the sort of those hot winds that get blown up from the Sahara. And so you've got these really, really kind of hot weather systems coming in. And it's like, what the hell? It's April. And it's funny because in Spanish, there's this saying, abril aguas mil, which means in April, it's the time for rain. Normally it's the rainy season. And there has not been one drop.
Wow. That's quite scary, right?
For months. No, it's very scary. Yeah.
It's bad because, well, we know climate change is a constant issue that we need to think about. But then, like, Spain, is one of the top producers of vegetables and fruits for most of Europe, right?
Huge. And olive oil is obviously a massive export. I mean, everywhere you kind of look, there's olive groves. Yeah. Even when people aren't even trying to grow olives are growing. And so it's this constant force, and it's a massive industry here. So
I remember I visited a friend who lives not far from you, actually, in Almeria, I think, a couple of years ago. And I just remember driving through the land there, and it was like a sea of plastic.
Yes,
like literally like a sea of plastic, and it was like the tarpaulin covers where they grow like fruit and veg underneath.
Yeah,
right?
It's like whole cities. It's massive, that area. That happens to be a big kind of like agricultural heartland of Spain, that area. I remember driving through it the first time, because it's also around, as you say, Almeria, which has this kind of rocky Martian kind of look. It's very dry, very rocky, very craggy. And then next to it, you've got these huge kind of, just for miles, grow houses, which look like, these sort of, Martian habitats. But you've got all those huge agricultural kind of plantations that suddenly just pop out of the desert. It's weird. But so without water, let's see. Yeah.
Well, the next episode of Shaun and Alex do agriculture.
Next time you're going to see me with a hazmat suit on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so what's been getting your attention lately, aside from heat waves?
Yeah, I know. So AI is a thing that just is not going to go away, and it's something that's increasingly part of our lives. I use it basically every single day now in my own personal projects, but it's kind of creeping more into the corporate world as well, regularly, and it's just something that I think we all need to make use of as best we can, lest it replace us.
So walk me through how you use it on a daily basis. I suppose. Okay, well, what's on that list? There's ChatGPT, I suppose. What else?
So, I mean, that's really the main one for me. I've used a couple other tools like Jasper and all the rest of it. But so as a content creator, I do YouTube, I do blogs. I've got a number of different kind of little sites and stuff that I work on. And it really, really helps me to produce content at scale. And also YouTube, for example, one of the things it takes one of the longest time is writing out the description of the video and stuff like that, and it really saves a lot of time. And then you've got like email marketing, keeping all my audience engaged on email. It can help with that.
Yes.
And it's just about striking a really good balance between having personality involved in this stuff and then having something that can produce content at scale. I think that's where we have to be, and I think that's where everyone who creates content, whether it's on a personal level or for a corporate, is going to have to be. I think it's going to have to be. Use it to create content at scale, but also inject personality. And that means that basically you're editing work that AI might have produced for you in some senses.
Well, yeah, it's funny you say personality, because if you use GPT-4, man, there's a whole lot of personality there. It's not perfect, but I suppose in a sense, the definition of personality comes down to something that's unique and that isn't perfect. There's an imperfection. There's a sort of a kind of a voice behind it or in it. And so if you're using it to ideate, I think that's good. But a lot of the time, especially down, it comes down to the quality of the prompt and how much detail you can give it, how much context you're able to give it. But it really can articulate things in, not just the kind of the breadth of what it can do. Obviously, we know that it's smart. It's powered by so many, just the size of the records and what powers the language model is huge. But at the same time, it's also got that depth behind it, So, yeah, I mean, do you think that it could be the kind of thing where eventually we might not distinguish between something that has a human personality and something that we think has a human personality, but it's actually AI?
Yeah, I think we will definitely get to that stage. And I actually think we're almost quite close to it in some senses. I'll touch on that in a second, but that's why it's going to be really important. I think the winners and losers in this, the winners are going to be people and organizations who are able to understand that this thing has its own personality, but can they train it on their own personality and on the tone of voice that they want to put forward, and on their own data as well. I think in a world where we're going to be flooded with AI content, if we talk about written content for one, we're going to have absolute floods of AI content out there. Which is fine, but then people are going to look, I think where people will gravitate towards is a piece of content connected to an identity of a brand, of an individual or an organization that they really trust or like. Right. So I think those are going to be the winners, and those winners are going to have to obviously use AI, but they're going to have to use it in a way that they are able to bring out their personality and let it shine. And things are going to be personality led, and you can see that, like YouTube, for example, people really, really like YouTube because they have direct conversations with another person. But even that's evolving. Like, so something huge, I think not many people are talking about, but YouTube is investing a lot of money right now on something people are calling like no-face YouTube channels.
Yeah.
And so that's basically where you would cover a topic in a video, but your face is not necessarily in it, and neither potentially is your audio. So you write a script, or you could get AI to write a script, and then you can get AI voiceovers, but you're telling a story about a topic you want to cover, something that's of interest, but your face is not in it. So that allows a lot of people who are not comfortable with being on video to create content.
Wow. So that's something that's going to, I mean, if you think about YouTube is not just a platform, but it's an entire culture of content creation and how it's given birth to everyone from PewDiePie to Casey Neistat to Logan Paul to everybody else, and those are just the big ones. But at the same time, it's, when you think of YouTube, you think of a YouTuber. There's someone doing the YouTubing. There's someone providing, the voice, presenting the content. And now we're taking that away.
Well, so I think those big personalities, like you mentioned, the Casey Neistat and that type of stuff, and all creators are going to have to, you're going to still have those personality-led channels,
sure, yeah,
right? And I think that will always exist, and people will always gravitate towards people.
There'll always be an audience, yeah.
But what I'm thinking with this kind of no-face stuff, which will also emerge alongside it, and I'm not sure if that will ever overtake, real personalities or not, but I think it connects quite closely into like anime culture. So I've never been involved in like anime and all that kind of stuff, but essentially what you're looking at is a cartoon, right? It's a fictitious thing that speaks and looks like a person, but it's a cartoon, right? Which people love. And I think these kind of no-face channels will evolve, that people will create a character
kind of in that direction. Yeah,
in that direction. Exactly, which it's a character that tells you information about a topic. and it'll tell a story. It'll be really informed. So I kind of think that that'll be the direction
But
that
he
side
won't
of
be
stuff
there.
is.
It'll be an avatar.
Yeah, it'll be a character that someone creates for themselves.
Sounds like Mark Zuckerberg.
It does, yeah. It's
Where
crazy,
did that
man.
all go? Where did that all go? Like what a big hoopla! Like maybe not even 2 years ago. When he had all of those huge big budget videos, all of the splash, all of the content that was dedicated to Meta becoming a metaverse company. Like, I mean, I have to say, even though I'm not at all a Facebook fan, I'm not even on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's what kind of a crusader I am. At the same time, like I really liked the balls on him, and the ability to go, we're just going to jump into this metaverse kind of project, straight into it. We're going to lead it. We don't really know what it is yet and what people want from it yet, but we're just going to invest and see what we can do. But
I guess when you've got that kind of capital behind you, you can just basically do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the sad thing about that story is I was, after seeing all the kind of presentations that they put on TV and social media, I was much like everyone else, like, this looks crap. But
yes, exactly.
Here's the thing. I went to a corporate presentation where Meta brought some gear into an office and let us try it. And I have to say, it is, the experience is probably 50 times better when you're using it than it looks like from the outside, if that makes sense.
Yes. You've got to be using the gear, right?
Exactly. And when you're using it, it actually makes a lot more sense. I mean, it's not great or anything, but it's you can kind of see where the use case comes in more. And I think they obviously struggled to communicate that to people who weren't, didn't have the gear.
Yeah. Because I suppose most people thought that, you're going to be glued in front of your laptop and you're still going to kind of have much the same experience, except that there's these sort of funny looking kind of 32 megabyte graphics card kind of avatars are going to be you.
Exactly, yeah.
Except that, they left that part out where it's actually an augmented reality piece, or at least maybe even a virtual one, where you've got to be buying the products, you've got to be buying the goggles or buying the. So what did you actually fit on when you were trying them on?
You get the goggles and you get like a hand device which kind of allows you to navigate, and they built like an office space. So virtually a bunch of us could be in the same office space, or like a kind of conference room, you could say. And it was actually kind of cool. I like the nerd in me was like, oh, that's that. I can kind of see it now. Like it looks and feels a lot better in the flesh than it does like when they try and like show you the screenshots, basically. Yes. And it did feel quite immersive. And I could see with a bit of development that actually it might be something that actually does take off eventually. So I can imagine that Mark Zuckerberg is quietly seething that the launch that they didn't pick up. People mocked it, but I don't think they're going to do away with it. I think they're going to quietly work on this.
I think so. I don't think that even though they might throw in the towel publicly, there's definitely still going to be some worker bees working on it, and maybe you kind of put it in the cupboard and see in 5 years' time, maybe there's a bit more of an appetite for it. I think that's definitely true. And then at least they would have that ability to say, well, we had a bit of a first mover advantage here.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like, experience is everything, especially when you've got a product like that, or an experience rather, that needs to be tried in order to be enjoyed rather than what it looks like, just like when you're trying a new pizza for the first time, or a cake or whatever it might be, like, oh, it might look crap, but when you taste it, it's a whole lot better. And then, but that's always then going to be a challenge.
100%.
So it's an adoption of the look of it, but it's also an adoption of that of the hardware too.
Definitely. That's the thing. The hardware is big and clunky, and I think for this to be adopted mainstream, it would need to become part of cool popular culture. I don't know, like you can imagine some kind of cool glasses brand making something that looks not too ridiculous and is not covered in wires everywhere. If that is a future, then I think that is something that will.
All I'm imagining right now is Mark Zuckerberg and a bunch of expensive wayfarers.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
What would that look like?
Crazy times, though.
It is. I mean,
one
it
of
is.
The things, one of the things I kind of touched on a little bit there when we were talking about, how will people distinguish between reality from AI? And when I said that I think we're almost close to that, one of the examples I think over the last week or two, maybe 2 weeks now,
Yeah.
was when that guy, I can't remember his name, but he brought out a Drake song.
Oh yeah. I read about that.
I listened to it. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And so the two things that happened was, first of all, the management, the music rights companies, put a stop to it immediately. We're like, nah, we're not having this. And then you had Grimes, who's Elon Musk's ex-partner.
Yes.
I don't know.
One of them. Yeah.
Yeah. The next day, she released a statement saying, if anybody wants to make AI content with me,
I saw that. Yeah.
my voice,
Yeah.
go for it. I'll take 50% of the royalties. And I was thinking, that is genius.
Yeah, exactly. You're either gonna, go sort of Universal Music on this, or you're gonna go Napster on it, right?
Yeah.
You're either gonna challenge it and try and kill it and use the legal process, which in the long run nobody benefited from, or you're gonna go, cool, let's see where this goes, and just nothing to lose, no problem.
Exactly. I'll take 50% of the profit, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The don't you find it fascinating, at least for me, that as interesting and as cool and as exciting as the technology is, I find myself often kind of looking or being drawn more to the reaction of people and how it forces us to all kind of completely recalculate our positions on all these things. It's almost like, when a bride is coming down the center kind of piece of a wedding, and everyone's looking at her and no one's looking at the groom. It's almost like there's the piece here that I find interesting, where things like sentience and ownership and big concepts like, is AI actually being, is there a creator there? Is there something perhaps even being plagiarized? There's a lot of these plagiarism cases now that are coming out of it as well. I mean, universities are having all these massive issues with, ChatGPT turning academics and students into sort of lazy, prompt writers. And so yes, that's wrong now, but that's because we're still in the framework of how we're assessing things before something like AI or generative AI came along. But in 5 years, 10 years, are we going to have a different way of looking at that question? Are we having to redefine things? Yeah.
I think we're going to have to, because this question is really only something that we've been aware of and talking about for 6 months. It's such a short period of time, and it's come on so quickly in that period of time. I know AI has been around longer than that, right? The type of AI that we're using, it has been around for years, but in terms of the public knowledge and use of it, it's been 6 months. It's such a short period of time that laws, regulations, governments, they're like caught with their pants down, and I think it'll take years for them to catch up on how to.
Yeah, as is always the case. It's funny how it reveals new things, but often new things that or rather, you recognize some of the same old patterns, like with technology, with cryptocurrency right now, what a dog show that is as well, how they're trying to regulate that in the US. It's just kind of this constant catching up, which they never do. And it never happens. And so then the regulation piece, which is there to safeguard and to provide trust and to provide a layer of protection, ultimately, it stabs itself in the heart.
Yeah. I think we will, though, ultimately, over 5 years, let's say, we'll see a massive shift in the way that regulation works in this area. And, you can imagine all the big copyright owner businesses out there, or rights owners, they'll be thinking about this big time. They'll have lawyers all over it. and so I think there will be a stage where there's some kind of framework involved in this.
At the same time, there's you mentioned 6 months earlier on, and a couple of weeks ago there was this big press release that, or rather an open letter, I think, signed by Elon Musk, and a number of huge, like just pretty much everyone was signing this letter, that we've got to pause AI development. And at first I was like, yeah, maybe a good idea. And secondly, after I was like, well, who's realistically ever going to do that? Are you now going to say, no, everybody down tools. Let's just keep it kind of, no, everyone stop. No, stop. You over there, stop. It's not going to happen. It's, it's
out of the box now, and it's not going to be put back in. I still think we need to understand that what we're dealing with isn't actually AI. It's not thinking for itself yet. What this thing is doing is scraping out all the information that exists publicly in the world right now, and then rehashing it into something else.
Yeah.
And so everything that's doing is just stuff that exists out there, and it's just redrawing it or rewriting it or whatever the case might be. And so we're not at the stage where it is totally thinking for itself. That would be another probably quite scary development.
Yeah, I absolutely. I'm actually running a kind of a small community learning program right now with a cohort of about 10 people. It's a project that I'm gearing up over the next few months, and we had our first session earlier this week, and we had a kind of an expert sort of speaker. His name is Theo Priestley, also a fellow Scotsman. You'd be pleased to know. Very cool guy, nice guy, and he was kind of talking about some of the, like, I asked him, like, in and amongst all of the confusion, what do we need to be doing? Because people are kind of, saying, yeah, well, we need to stop AI, or we need to do this or that, but there isn't much color on how to do these things. And I asked him, well, what do you recommend? What can we actually do? And he said, well, one of the things we should do is we need to take it out of the sort of the academic think tank environments. We need to kind of get out of the armchair and move away from sort of like still treating it like it's this thing that is still sort of hypothetical in a sense.
Yeah.
And then really involve the kind of the practicing professionals, the practitioners in the conversation about how it might threaten them and how they could kind of, I don't know, to either take a leaf out of their book or perhaps find a way to kind of get ahead of it a little bit before it steamrolls them. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. There are a lot of people who are worried out there, but I don't take that view at all. And I probably agree with your speaker there in terms of, I use this for my own benefit as a content creator.
Yeah.
Okay, there's two sides. Like, I have a day job and then I have my content creator hat. Well, content creator side, I can only see benefits from you right now. Like, it just makes my work so much easier and has allowed me to scale quicker. And so I think we should all just like use it and try and learn how to make as much money as possible with it before it ultimately devours us. Go with it, because this is something that ultimately is still for us and for our benefit.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. It's like, what's also interesting is to think about the areas where AI is maybe it's sort of likely to last have an impact. The areas where the human interaction or human skills or humanity is going to still kind of really retain its ground right until the last kind of moment. So someone in the cohort said, well, would you attend a live orchestra played by robot violinists? And I thought about that. Well, I mean, I'd be intrigued by the idea, but if I got proposed the idea of like, yeah, would you like to come to an orchestra tonight? And I mean, I'd see it first time around, obviously, just to be blown away by it. But would I keep on going? Would I appreciate it for the musical element? Would I appreciate it for the fact that something has been created? I think maybe in my heart of hearts, I wouldn't. I would want to see human performers, still.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess it would be the difference between consuming something online, which is quite throwaway sometimes, right? You could listen to a piece of music that lasts 1 to 3 minutes or whatever, and even if you knew that was created by AI, you'd think, all right, whatever, cool. But then actually going to experience it in person, like in a venue, then that's probably where you're always going to connect to humans on that level.
Well, exactly, because something like that would be reproduced. They may perhaps it would be less sort of that. That's why we listen to music. We want that spontaneous kind of combination of things to come together and the sound to feel just right. There's that moment in between the beats and the tempo where it gels together. Whereas if something is kind of, or at least if it feels almost pre-planned, then well, what's the point? It's like watching a football game when you already know the results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I think one of the other big developments I've seen over the last couple of weeks is people have created like plugins and agents are calling them. I don't fully understand the agent concept, but I know that you can, for example, have a team of AIs that interact with each other now. So if you have one goal in mind for a business objective or anything else, you can basically have a team of these AIs that interact with each other and ask each other for information to achieve one goal.
Oh, wow.
So that becomes really interesting. So each one will have its own role, within your kind of organization. That's another level of development, which is just it's kind of crazy to consider, but it is the development of this type of stuff.
And at an organizational level, I mean, thankfully, at least one of us is gainfully employed. So like, how are things kind of being played out currently? What's the general attitude with the people that you work with towards AI? Is it one of sort of embracing? Is it one of fear? Is it one of curiosity? Like,
I'd say curiosity is probably the biggest thing. Like, I don't think people in general who I meet outside or inside work or whatever, I don't think fear is the biggest word. I think it's curiosity more than anything. It's like, how can this help us? Which is good and it's positive. There's a lot of people asking me all the time and me in content roles, like, how can we use this more? I guess the challenge is like, there's a lot of new, really, really new AI platforms out there. And this goes for corporates everywhere. I'm not sure they should be totally trusted with any kind of data at the moment. And so
right.
all as a general out there corporate world, I think that's something that all corporates should consider. Like, how are they trusting these platforms with data? So that's one thing. I guess what will be worked on by companies, and I'm sure someone will make a gazillion dollars off this, is by building platforms. They might already be in development or already exist, but platforms that can be siloed within an organization. So
yes,
you would plug in a platform, software, AI thing into an organization which is totally walled within it, and can't seek information without it. And so it would take all the information that exists within that organization, all the data, but it wouldn't expand outwards. And that's something I can imagine would be really useful for an organization, because it could notice patterns and trends within data.
Yes.
That
to high precision. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That would take people a long time to kind of pick up on. That's something I think we will see in the corporate world. I would imagine. So this is the crazy thing, right? Either someone's developing that, or someone like, I don't know, Horse should develop it. Like this is where big companies thrive and die, right?
It's true. Yeah.
I think that's because all these different platforms out there right now, they're cool and they're good to use, but on a corporate level, scary for all different kind of legal reasons, right? And so someone should, I don't know if I'm giving this idea away for free, right? Develop a platform where you can kind of silo
just
it.
Just share the royalties.
Exactly.
50%, yeah.
I think that's going to be real interesting.
Yeah. I also find it interesting at a lot of the kind of clients and the customers I work with are often at the sort of the smaller business level, or the entrepreneurs, and how it instantly gives them this ability to leverage, obviously, just not only themselves and their skills, but also to, just the exponential kind of efficiency that they can tap into. Immediately they can take a task that might have taken them a week to complete, and within a few minutes it's done, whether it might be putting together a presentation, whether it might be learning how to come up with the right formulas in an Excel sheet to map their financial projections correctly. It's just in every area there's the ability to kind of get a 10x sort of improvement.
Exactly.
It's just crazy.
I guess the thing with that is, the reason that I'm more enthusiastic and excited than not is, with all those things you mentioned, they're all things that as humans we don't really add value to.
Exactly.
Because these are systems that have been somebody's created already, right? Like I don't know, 20 years ago, and we're just kind of using the same systems to do the same jobs, but they don't add value anymore. They take us a long time, and it's a job. These are types of jobs that nobody really wants to do. If we're being honest, like building a PowerPoint presentation. So I would much rather have an AI to do that type of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or at least get them to do 90% of the dog work, and then we come in with the garnishes and the salsa. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, speaking of which, 90% in the dog work and turning AI, taking AI and letting it turn you into a overnight sensation. How is your whiskey business going?
Yeah. So I've actually
maybe give us a little bit of context to people listening on what you did.
Yeah. So there was a bit of a challenge online where someone said, on Twitter, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he went to AI ChatGPT-4 and said, listen, I want to start a business. You tell me what to do. And the goal is to make money. And so it urged him to start an affiliate website where he would create content around a topic, build up an audience, and then start, selling products for it.
Mm.
And that kind of it reminded me, I actually had an affiliate site a few years ago that didn't really work out. But I always knew there was something in it. So I kind of went down the same route and started plugging it into ChatGPT and see how I can build it out. And it's kind of evolved now. So the whiskey one's part just for a moment, but it is an idea that I'm going to run with, and it will be real building that website. But it's evolved into other kind of niche areas, which I know that I've already got content on based on my YouTube stuff.
Right.
So, for example, a website which is purely about Scotland and travel. Having done a bit of, on the back of building that whiskey website, I did a lot more keyword research and SEO, and discovered some interesting trends and how people are searching for travel to Scotland, which is, it's a bit of quite a phenomenon over the last few years. It's a really, really popular place to come and visit. And so
absolutely.
I also noticed the gap in the market for that. So I've built out a website which is specifically about travel in Scotland. And then I'm also going to, on the side of that, build out a website which is specifically about whiskey as well. But the whiskey one kind of got parked for a little bit. But yeah, it's based on AI and how, this is my experiment overall, right? Doesn't matter where you have one website, two websites, 5 websites. How can you scale these with AI? And that's what I'm doing. I'm using AI to help me scale the publishing of content. And the trick is, I think, and we kind of touched this on the beginning, create content at scale, but also make it seem like it's part of our brand and part of our personality.
Of course. Yeah. And so it also gave you some information or some guidance on who to target, right?
Yeah. It was really great. Like it can basically build an entire marketing plan for you. So if you want to launch a site or a brand on any topic, if you give it the right prompts, it will build out your entire marketing strategy for you, like in an instant.
Incredible.
Which is amazing. And you just have to follow the instructions it gives you.
I have a crazy sort of theory in the back of my mind where what's happening right now is also giving birth to this huge, almost secondary marketplace of different sort of AI, ChatGPT hackers and, kind of pop-up boutique digital agencies who are using everything, based on AI, all of their tools, all of their go-to-market plans, their graphic design, their content, their SEO, all of that is being informed by AI, which is smart as a gap in the market. But I'm thinking that the more and more that pops up and the more these kinds of sort of businesses and one-man bands and kind of, how-to kind of businesses pop up, the more that they're going to sophisticate the level of prompt writing, because ultimately they're having to work with the AI to get what they need from it to go and sell that as a product. But it also means then that, do you think that the AI itself, as it's being trained to kind of, it almost, I don't want to use a humanistic word, but like as it almost knows, what it's going to be asked from you, because it's experiencing this as an incoming request again and again and again.
Yep.
Do you think that it's the kind of thing that is going to almost accommodate this so that it starts to vary its answers and it almost starts to self-learn from itself? So it's like, that used to be a trend, but now we're writing prompts differently, or now we're doing things differently, or now a marketing plan needs to consist of this stuff. Or is it going to make everyone the same? Is it going to kind of, I haven't thought about what the answer to that might be, but I suspect there might be a singularity of sorts there.
Yeah, well, this is something I've tested a little bit, because when, about building out these websites, the goal was just basically to get as much content out there as possible, as quickly as possible. And one of them, for example, just kind of good practice is to have like an FAQ section at the bottom of every article about the topic, right? And I've noticed a trend where most of them are very similar in how they're formatted and written. But then every once in a while, it'll throw out like a random different format or way of it speaking. And I'm kind of wondering, like, that's odd. Like, why did it change? And so,
like, why is that last FAQ in Portuguese?
Exactly, yeah, it's stuff like that. It's weird, but I guess this is where a lot of those kind of agent GPTs come in, because they are going to start communicating with each other. Every
is exactly
AI will have its own role, and they'll communicate with each other. And it'll be interesting to see if everything is actually the same, or if it does start throwing out different. Because we don't. That's the thing with that type of content. We don't want everything to be the same as everything out there. We want it to be different, right?
Yeah.
And that's where people who create content need to be careful. They need to use it to scale, but also to have your own individuality injected into it.
Exactly. So for me, I think I can rest easy at night thinking that, those human skills, the ability to solve problems, make decisions, tell a story, use intuition, exhibit a sense of empathy, those kinds of things are probably going to, I think, become more high value because they're going to be easier to fake.
Yeah.
If we call it a spade here, because essentially that is what AI does until we decide to change that definition and label it a person, which might happen.
Exactly.
You never know.
Yeah, it's I don't know where that's going to go. It's the type of thing where I think we're all really just guessing at the moment.
Yes.
So I think the most sensible course of action is for all of us, if we work in any kind of creative field, whether it's music or content or photography or video, whatever it is to make the most of it and use it as much as possible. So at least we understand it. I think everybody who's sensible should have a full understanding of how they can use it or how it's impacting their industry.
Well, exactly. And also how that also impacts the way that these disciplines like, photography, graphic design, whatever it might be, are then going to be taught at the sort of the education level. So, for example, does it mean that, from next year onwards, all sort of graphic design courses are now going to have a component where you learn how to write prompts instead of using Adobe InDesign? On the one hand, you'd probably have kind of people that might think, well, that's ridiculous. It's not enhancing any design skills. But at the same time, it's another tool, just like the pen tool and the paint tool, So we have to once again re-examine these definitions.
Yeah, 100%. Even for a designer, I imagine there's a lot of tasks. I mean, I'm not a designer, but I know there must be a lot of tasks that designers hate doing, and it takes them a long time.
Yeah.
So they could use AI to scale up the things that they don't want to do. The parts of a design job that they think isn't really the value of them. The creativity is what they bring to the table, right? And so they could ultimately use it to do the crap that they don't want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, you know what just popped into my head? I think it might be a good idea to observe just a moment's silence for crypto.
Crypto, yeah. RIP.
What is going on there? Like, what? I mean, I've been looking at CoinDesk and seeing the frequency of articles kind of just drop every day. The kind of the frequency of search terms and even trading volumes across nearly every single coin has just fallen off a cliff. What's going on?
I actually think it's quite simple, right? I believe that when crypto had a really, really good phase during the pandemic, people were worried, but also people had a lot of spare cash at the same time.
It was a casino, man.
It was a casino. So I was worried about my job, worried about all the rest of it, but ultimately I wasn't spending anything because I was staying at home. So it's probably the time in my life when I've been able to save more money the quickest. And I think a lot of people were in a similar position. And I know in different countries they had different schemes. Like in America, they had checks that went out to a lot of different people based on their circumstances. And so people had cash. And so it was like, oh, well, why not? I might as well do something with it.
Straight into Shiba Inu.
Yeah. Exactly. And it just seemed like everything was going up. I think now we're in a circumstance where people are genuinely worried, about their finances, because inflation has crept up to a point where it's affecting everyone. You can see it when you go shopping to buy basic goods. And at the end of the month, this is the dead truth. Everyone I speak to, no matter what type of job they do, is saying, wow, I don't know what's happened to my money at the end of the month. They don't have spare money. And so money that people had spare at the end of the month, they were either saving or they were putting into things like crypto or other assets, right? People genuinely don't have that spare cash anymore, across the board. And I'm talking about people who are, middle income, high income, low, the whole,
okay. So I agree with you, but then to steelman the other side of this. So at the same time, though, one of the kind of the huge central hallmarks of crypto, or at least Bitcoin. I mean, Saifuddin Amos from his book, The Bitcoin Standard. I'm not sure if you've read that, but the kind of the huge part of the book that he kind of goes into is the fact that you've got the devaluation of currency, you've got inflation, you've got all of these controls that are supposed to be working that don't work, and so the flight to safety that crypto, or at least Bitcoin, was there to preserve wealth and to stop these kinds of things from happening until the world realizes that de-dollarization is a good idea. Okay, so maybe some of that happens, maybe it doesn't. But at the same time, should this then not be the context under which all of that is then realized? Why are we not seeing the price of Bitcoin go to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 because people are worried about their jobs and the economy? Something has not worked.
The thing that's not worked is, in my personal opinion, I think all of that is great and that is true ultimately, but it's not at a stage where people can actually see the practical side of it yet. So for example, yeah. If you could actually use Bitcoin now to go and buy your groceries,
yeah,
that's when that would be the case.
Yeah.
But when people are genuinely counting their money at the end of the month to buy the basic goods that they need to feed their family, like they're not going to say, oh well, I know cryptocurrency is going to save me, because it's not. They're going to put the money in there and they can't use it for anything really. I mean, I know there is some utility and there's some things you can.
No, but not on an everyday level, or at least the use case that we've all wanted to hear about has developed somewhat. But I think it's what do they say? Everyone's happy. Everyone's a saint in a bull market, right? But when the chips are down, then different kinds of forces act on, and then we all go back to the essentials. And it, I suppose, reveals, at least for now, like you've said, that the crypto is not really on the essentials list, at least not yet.
And if they had developed it quicker, whereas you could have had a debit card where you could go to the store, which was loaded with Bitcoin, and you could buy anything you wanted, that would be a different story. But and if they had managed to develop it to that stage, I think then, or if you had some kind of, if your wallets that you have on your phone could make a transaction with anything, then
I mean,
that's when we would see that development.
Let's also not forget that I think everyone's distraction has now completely been eaten up by AI. I mean, look at the majority of this podcast.
Exactly.
We're fascinated by it, just like we were fascinated by the rise of all these stellar cryptocurrencies. A year or two ago, everyone had a wallet. My gran had a wallet, which is weird because she's dead. But it's just everyone was sort of jumping up and down about it, and now our distraction is sort of in a completely other, in another direction.
Yeah. I mean, I just genuinely believe it is, but certainly here in the UK, I know the UK is, as far as like European economies go, it's kind of in the shitter, right? But people are genuinely, like, everyone I know is at the end of the month, like, counting their pennies to like pay the bills.
Yeah, it's
so tough, like in that situation, who is thinking I'm going to put money in crypto?
Yeah, I suppose it raises more difficult questions, with who are we governed by, and what are the policies like, and what kind of future can we expect, and where can I go and buy a house? That's also the other thing. The housing ladder is just more and more and more difficult to get onto.
It's difficult to get onto.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, those who might have had their first ever mortgage, their costs have went through the roof. The rents have gone through the roof. Like everything's gone up when salaries basically haven't. And so, I think that I think that's the biggest headwind for crypto. It's not necessarily the base facts of what crypto is and what it does has always been there, and we know that long term that is that's still true. But I think for crypto is like, I don't know, like a thing or an entity or a bunch of entities. To avoid this type of dip in future, it needs to have that base ability where people can actually use it and at scale.
I suppose that's the hugest, most material difference that people can point to when it comes to the rise of crypto and where it is now, and then the rise of AI, which is also why I think the kind of the fascination with AI is probably something that'll outlast how long it took us to get bored of crypto, because it's that immediate, oh my God, I can go onto ChatGPT and I can get a Shakespearean sonnet of my financial report, or I can do this on Midjourney, or I can, all of these tools immediately, they come up and they immediately provide value. Whereas crypto is the, there's so much of the dream and the philosophy behind crypto, which I think is noble and I think does still have merit, but when you're dealing with humans who want instant gratification and immediate kind of distraction, then
and ultimately, I think the reason that crypto had such a moment in the sun, during the pandemic times, is a lot of people had spare cash, like not just
it's true.
people who are into crypto,
It was
but
different.
like
Yeah.
it was a different time. People, lots of people at the same time, millions of people were looking for something to keep them occupied, and that's why YouTube channels about crypto were massive at the time as well. People just wanted something to believe in and something to be a part of.
Yeah.
Whereas now there's just this retrenchment across the board, right? And people are like, can I buy eggs and milk this week?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but this is just about the kind of gut feeling.
Well, let's try and end off on a happy note. What are you? Is there anything that you're looking forward to, or stuff that's got your attention right now that you're excited about?
I think genuinely the thing I'm focusing on right now and spending like almost all my time is, apart from my working hours, I spend the rest of my time on how I'm using AI to build my content businesses, because I think that is going to be, I think that's going to be a big thing. Like I have a lot of faith, and I'm really excited about it. Actually, I think it's a massive opportunity for me and anyone else who wants to build a brand about something. And I think if I could recommend one thing to anyone out there, is if you've got a passion about a topic, or about a topic, or you're interested in a topic, create content, use AI to create content, build a brand, because it can do so much for you.
Yeah.
And we're in a world where you can either use that as your full-time thing, or you can use it as a side thing that provides you lots of extra income or opportunities.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I think that it's the kind of thing that right now appeals to, content creators and freelancers and entrepreneurs. But I think that in probably the not too distant future, you're going to have the same kind of thing happening with full-time employees of businesses, because the more kind of desperate and competitive, big, especially in sort of technology and financial sort of sectors, those areas are going to become so nail-bitingly competitive between each other, which means that it's all about margins, it's all about cutting risk, which means that I think employees are going to be dealt with more and more like freelancers. You're going to be contractors. Sure, you might have a friend of mine, she's a contractor, and she gets leave. As a contractor, you get paid leave. I was like, what? Yeah. Maybe that's not a new thing, but it's the first time I heard it. Like, what? As a contractor, normally you're so replaceable. You're as good as the paper the contract's written on, and like, what? Now you're you're getting leave. Yeah, it's great. So it shows that it's going in a direction which is going to be embracing not necessarily only the remote work thing, because I think parts of that will kind of dissolve, parts of that will stay, but also this general idea that the company is not going to be this vanguard of security all the time, which means people are going to have to find that sense of security or empowerment, or finding a way to display their talents in a different way. And I think that personal branding piece is definitely it.
100%. But also I think personal branding, one thing, but second of all, to lean into things that you're passionate about or know about. So I was listening to a podcast last night. I don't know if you know a guy called Pat Flynn, who does like marketing podcasts. So I was so fascinated by this. He has done marketing and he's kind of wrote the book on marketing for decades now, and how to like be an entrepreneur within marketing as well. The thing that he's making most money on right now, his most profitable enterprise, is a YouTube channel and a content stream that he launched about Pokemon. Of all of his enterprises he has, like he launched courses, he does SEO, he does all kinds of stuff. His most profitable business today is a Pokemon content outlet.
Gosh.
And so that something he was interested in, and he went for it. He found a massive audience, and that's the thing. Like, maybe you don't have to do stuff that sucks anymore. Maybe you could do stuff that you're interested in.
But if it's got Pikachu's face on it, then you're in the palm seat.
I mean, you could be in. Listen, there's lots of hobbies out there. People could be into anything.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be an audience for it. And I think that's what I'm excited about. I think we're in a era where more and more people are starting to realize that.
Yeah, and I think that the more people can double down on this concept of micro audiences. I've always been fascinated by micro audiences, what people are interested in. If there's only like 50 of you in the whole world, how are you going to be able to find those people who are interested in exactly that at that level of nicheification? And because they're there. You just got to find them, and you just got to find a way to kind of nurture them in some way. And I think that these kinds of tools are making it easier to do that. Yeah.
100%. And what about yourself? What's exciting you right now?
I'm pretty excited about the project that's in front of me right now, which I'll definitely divulge more detail about in a future episode for sure. Something else that's interesting me is this kind of a human kind of area of interest is the sort of science behind decision making, how people make decisions, and of course, all of that's being impacted and augmented by AI and everything that we're experiencing online. But it's just interesting to see, especially when you're in a situation with a customer on the other side, and you're there as the seller of a product or whatever it is, and how I think things are kind of changing. With regard to how people perceive the decision-making process, because we're all, it goes with the passport of being human. Everyone's a decision maker, and often I think companies or old school kind of B2B businesses, of which I was a part of, a long time ago. I remember having this idea that a decision maker was this guy, with great hair and shoes that fit, and he was sort of the man who controlled all of the purse strings, and he just needs to be there to come in and make a decision and be decisive, and that's it, And so you've got that bias of thinking, well, that's all it takes, and for you to influence that decision is simply to just put your product in front of them and to give them a sense of the benefits and what the features are, and then that's it. But there's so much more behind it, and there's so much more of an organic process of what happens. What are the emotions involved? Who are they? And what are they bringing? They're bringing their own agenda, their own biases to the table when it comes to that, and kind of coming onto this key realization that in order to make a difference into your buyer's world, or your customer, your subscriber, your audience, whoever they are, it doesn't really matter, because the interaction is still the same. In order for them to make a decision to ultimately work with you or to purchase something from you, the work that you do is not so much about selling the product, but in giving them a different perspective on how to go about making that decision. So it's about shifting that belief or shifting a realization that either hasn't happened or can't happen on their own. And you're there to kind of facilitate that, whether it might be through content or a conversation, or maybe even if it's through a clever funnel that you have. But it's just, I'm just endlessly fascinated by how people make those decisions and what contributes to that. Because I think often we don't know why, we make decisions. And that's often because we have to, we're often in this situation where the bigger the decision is, the less informed we are. If you think about when you needed to go to university and you had to pick your subjects, or you had to pick this or something that was like life or death, it feels so unclear. It's so difficult to make those decisions. Whereas, I know what breakfast cereal I want. Yeah, easy decision. So it's these polarities.
Psychology is fascinating, man. It's endlessly fascinated by this whole topic as well, and I think it just plays such a big part in basically everything we do.
And it'll continue to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great, man. Great conversation. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, enjoyed it.